We are back in the Daily Word. Welcome. We are going to start the chapter in Matthew that starts off with the parable of the vineyard, which is chapter 20. So, in the parable of the vineyard, Jesus is explaining what he said at the end of Matthew 19 to Peter. Peter asked him, as we read yesterday, Peter asked him, what do we get, Lord, for following you? If you might remember that the rich young ruler, Jesus told him what was necessary for him to receive the kingdom of heaven. And the bottom line was the thing that was necessary is that the rich young ruler followed Jesus. He would forsake the world, and in this context, his earthly possessions. But then he would follow Christ. And the rich young ruler went away because that was too much of a cost for him to follow Christ. And that's the case with a lot of people, right? And then Peter says, it's always Peter, right? And then Peter says, Lord, what do we get? Because obviously Peter dropped his fishing nets and followed Christ. And the Lord goes on to talk about how those who follow him, who have left their families and their homes, are going to get 100-fold. And obviously in God's economy, we don't know what that means. But it certainly seems like it's going to be a very big reward for those who follow Christ and do his will. And that's what it means to follow Christ, right? You're defined as a follower when you follow where the leader takes you. And in this context, the leader takes us into the process of sanctification and working out our faith and serving each other and serving him. So we're all in for him. And even though we might have moments of that battle between the flesh and that battle between the Holy Spirit, our trajectory is that we're following Christ. So that's the context here. He's going to answer now Peter's question. And he's going to try to explain it in a parable. And I think this is a simple parable. And there are some commentaries and some pastors who really love to dice and slice this parable up and assign meanings that I personally don't think are there. But because we only have a few minutes, I'm not going to get an opportunity to kind of share what they're saying about this parable. So I'll keep it very simple, which matches my personality. We'll keep it simple today, and we'll just kind of do a reading of it. And today, unlike other days, I'm going to read it without commentary. I'm going to read the passage, and then we'll comment afterwards. Okay. So if you would drop your eyes down to verse 1 in chapter 20, we're going to read all the way through verse 16. So we're just going to do half of the chapter today. For the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for a denarius a day, he sent them into his vineyard. And going out about the third hour, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace. And to them he said, You, go into the vineyard too, and whatever is right I will give you. So they went out. And going out again about the 6th hour and the 9th hour, he did the same thing. And about the 11th hour he went out and found others standing. And he said to them, Why do you stand here idle all day? And they said to him, Because no one has hired us. And he said to them, You go into the vineyard too. And when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, Call the laborers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last and then up to the first. And when those hired about the 11th hour came, each of them received a denarius. Now, when those hired first came, they thought that they would receive more, but each of them also received a denarius, because that was the agreed upon payment. And on receiving it, they grumbled at the master of the house, saying, These last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us. You have borne the burden of the day and the scorch. And I'm sorry. Let me start over. These last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat. But he replied to one of them, Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last worker as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do as I choose with what belongs to me? Or do you begrudge my generosity? So the last will be first, and the first will be last. So God's economy is simple. Christ is sovereign. He gets to pick his workers. I will say this going into the parable a little bit. I think he's sharing with his disciples that even though they were the first to follow him, there will be more coming after them. And even though that they might work longer and in the scorching heat of the day, as Christianity is invading the earth, there will be people coming after them, workers that will come after them. And then I think Jesus is simply saying, look, I'm going to pay the way I see fit. So I don't think this is a parable about salvation. And I don't even think it's a parable about necessarily rewards. I think this is a simple parable to understand about God's sovereignty and the fact that he's going to build his church after this generation of followers. So the context is follow me, and Jesus starts to unpack the first and the last and the first, and understanding that this is going to be a generational thing. So that's my simple understanding. If there's some, there's people out there that are like, hey, Thackeray, you're way too simple. Okay, I get it. I'm simple, but I'm firmly fixed that this is about the sovereignty of God, and he gets to pick his workers. So all that to say, thanks for joining me. Tomorrow we'll go to the last part of this section in chapter 20, and we will see you then. Have a great day. Oh, you know what? Before I go, as a way of encouragement, when you go out today into the field, do it with joy. Do it with joy, understanding that you're not one of those people standing idly by who's left out of God's work. He's called you in. And I think we all need to remember that that's an honor, that we don't deserve it. It's only because of his graciousness and his mercy to us that we're allowed to work on his behalf. But go today in joy. So whether you're driving your kids to school, picking them up from school when you're listening to this, whatever, or you're in the workplace, you're studying, whatever it is, do it with joy. When you're dealing with other people especially, and let them see that you're happy to be working in the field that the Lord has brought you into. So God bless you, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.